How's it going, sports fans, bettors, and cappers, and welcome back to the Competitive Hedge Podcast. I'm your host of the show, Kenneth, and this is episode 209. This podcast is all about sports and the world of betting. We talk about the latest in the sports world before giving you some plays on the betting front. Now, as always, before we get into today's episode, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Before we get started with today's episode, are you looking to make some wagers? Then head over to bet99.com. Bet99 is a Canadian sportsbook and casino that offers in-play betting, player props, a cash-out option, and many more great products. There are a variety of sports available on the website to bet on, including NHL, NBA, NFL, and MLB. Bet99 works smoothly on both desktop and mobile, and the mobile app can be downloaded from the website's homepage. Now, depositing and withdrawing funds is hassle-free with a number of well-known methods available to use, so you know your money is safe and secure. The website can be viewed in both English and French, and customer service is available 24/7 with their live chat option. So go to bet99.com today to make an account. Use code SHOOTERS at sign-up, and please gamble responsibly. You must be 19 plus years of age to do so. And if you have questions or concerns about your gambling or the gambling of someone close to you, contact Connex Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 to speak to an advisor free of charge. Now, let's get back to the show. Now, we got to talk about our recent betting record because it has absolutely been on point, and we got a perfect video to describe how it's been.
Cut the check.
Boom, cut the check. Cut the check. All the beers are on me. Where we going? Where we going?
Now, our recent betting record has been on point. Manchester City team total on the weekend over 2.5 hit, over 3.5 for the game hit. We live bet Colorado money line at plus 265. TCU minus 18.5 was our original wager, but after that first drive, we knew where that game was heading, so we were able to hedge out and make some profit. Tennessee covered, A&M covered, Bama covered, USC covered. Overall, a lot of college football winners, minus LSU getting steamrolled by Florida State in one of the upsets of the week. Now, let's touch on Euro qualifiers to watch on Thursday. I'm not going to pretend to know some of these matchups. I will not be tuning into Kazakhstan, Finland, won't be turning into Lithuania, Montenegro. Slovenia, Northern Ireland is a hard pass, as is Czech Republic, Albania. And Poland, Faroe Islands was one that we really looked at, but we're going to stay away because of the number. And speaking of a number that's huge, Denmark versus San Marino. Denmark is minus 20,000 to win this game. So the spread is really gross. When you look at an over 2.5 at minus 1,200, they're expecting this to be in the 4 or 4.5 goal range. I think that still is playable. I don't think that you play the spread because San Marino, they always have the potential to score a goal. I don't see it happening for a nation this small, but I think if you can get the over 4.5 goals, I think there's a ton of value to be had there. Netherlands and Greece is one that's probably the matchup of the day. Minus 225 Netherlands are at home. Now, the Greeks are not what they once were. They're not the 0-4 Euro squad. They are much weaker, but they sit second in the standings regardless. And part of that has to do with the fact that Netherlands has only played 2 games, and their goal differential is not in a great spot after their 4-0 loss to France to open things up. For me, though, they're still the second best team in this group. Minus 1.5 is plus 125 if you're feeling spicy. I think the over 2.5 goals is the way to go at minus 125. It's a little bit more conservative, but still playable at that number. And then you got France versus Ireland, a fun matchup here. Minus 475. So again, a huge spread for this one. Keep an eye on what this France team looks like. No Varane likely for them. Still got guys like Pavard at the back. Probably Mbappe up front, Giroud, Griezmann, the team that went to the World Cup final just last year. But I would keep an eye on this one. I think you could get a nice France number if the game starts out a little bit slow. Moving on now, let's look at Thursday night football. And the big news that came out today, Travis Kelce hyperextending his knee at practice. I am treating it as though he is not a go for this game. I think the Chiefs can win without him, and I don't think that Andy Reid wants to risk him week 1. They've got Super Bowl aspirations, and trying to throw him out there after an injury in practice, I don't think is a wise move. I think the Chiefs are going to take their time bringing him back. And it's also, when you look at this spread, 6.5 is what it's been at for weeks. Now it's down to 5.5. So many same game potential parlays ruined because he's not going to likely go. So I'm really intrigued by this one. I can't wait for the NFL season to kick off. But we've broken down what games are happening. So with that, let's give you our picks for the day. We give the ad read a little bit later on in this episode when we've got Walker Bailey on for our NFL future bets. But let's start with our first pick, which is Netherlands versus Greece, over 2.5, minus 125. Netherlands, their first two games have 3 and 4 goals. Greece, 1, 3, and 3. So I think goals are going to be fine. I think they've got plenty of scoring up front. You've got guys like Depay for Netherlands, Bakasidis for Greece. I think we see both teams score, and we'll see if Netherlands takes care of business at the Philips Stadium in Eindhoven. I think it's one that could potentially decide who's going to advance in this group. I'm also going to play Kansas City team total under 29.5 at minus 115. Historically, the Chiefs have not actually done the best at home. It's not that they don't win, they just don't go over as much as they do in other places. I could maybe see them struggling a little bit early on. Mahomes tends to lean on Kelsey out there in pivotal spots in the game. I still see the Chiefs winning, maybe in the 28-21 or 28-24 range instead of the 31 or 35 points that I thought they were going to put up earlier in the week. But as I said, keep on listening. We got Walker Bailey on to do a full future bet preview, predictions for the NFL season, and a whole lot more. Now let's head over to part 2. Welcome back to the Competitive Hedge Podcast, and we are here to preview the NFL season from a betting perspective. I couldn't think of a better guy to have on than my fellow degenerate over at the Off the Ball Network. He's the co-host of Field Stormers podcast, Walker Bailey. Walker, how you doing today?
I'm doing really good, man. We're 3 days out from NFL football. Week 1 of college is in the rear view now. So, well, it'll be in the rear view this time tomorrow morning. Got one game left, but most of it's in the rear view. It's just good to be back.
Well, let's get your pick for tonight. Clemson Duke. Where are we going with this one? What's your favorite for that game?
I took under 55. I think both defenses have a ton of starters back. They should play well. Clemson has to go on the road, which will make it a little bit more difficult for their offense. With the new clock rules, I think both teams are going to be a little bit slower tempo. Although Garrett Riley's offense at TCU was pretty high tempo, I think it's just going to take a minute for Clemson to adjust. But I do think defensively they're going to be really sound. I'm not super high on Duke offensively this year. I just think it's a game that ends up probably in the, I think Clemson covers. So I think it'll be in the 35-17 range, which I think is that's 52 points, gets us under 55.
Fair. So you're giving out a college play. I'll give out a CFL play for today. Argos on the road minus 7.5, playing Hamilton. Chad Kelly, who Walker knows. I think that he's going to have a really big game in that game in Hamilton. We'll check back in a couple days because we're recording here on a Monday. Episode goes out on Wednesday. We'll see if we were geniuses or whether we came in with the wrong leans. So let's start with our NFL future bets discussion. That's where we're going to give out some of our favorite plays for the entire season as far as future bets go. Now, most of mine are player prop related. I haven't really dove into my regular season over-under win totals yet. The only one that I've really looked at from that perspective is I've seen that Arizona's at 4.5, which I actually like the under there because I don't see a scenario where Kyler actually plays this year. I do think that he's going to not see the field. We're going to see Arizona. I know that Dobbs is there now, which gives me actually a little bit less confidence that they're going to go under because I think he's better than what McCoy was. And clearly Arizona did as well because McCoy's no longer there. But under 4.5 is where I like on the regular season win totals. Walker, have you seen any lines there that you like? And if not, then what's your first one that you like for the year?
All right, we'll start down in my neck of the woods. I took the Atlanta Falcons to win the NFC South plus 215. New Orleans is probably a deserved favorite here at plus 105 with Derek Carr coming in. The defense is going to be pretty good, but I'm pretty sure that their leadership with Dennis Allen is bordering more on incompetence than it is above average head coach material. It's a favorite that I'd love to try to beat. I think Atlanta's got a lot of weapons offensively that I'd like to back. I'm not super sold on Ritter, but I think the run game is going to be good. They're really good up front. Bijan Robinson's going to be a weapon in more ways than one. Drake London's been really, really good. It's just been under the radar since the Falcons haven't been good. So I think Kyle Pitts is also really, really good. So I'll take the Falcons to win the NFC South. I think you're going to get a lot of people trying to convince you that Carolina's the team to back with a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young. and some weapons there. But in reality, if Carolina were to compete in this division, you're counting on Bryce Young to be a really good quarterback as a rookie, and you're counting on guys like Jonathan Mingo to step up and be legit NFL wide receivers as rookies. So I lean more towards going to the dudes who have been in the league for a minute. I think NFL games are won on the line of scrimmage. Atlanta's offensive line is really good. They'll do enough defensively to stay in games. I think they're going to be able to score points. So I took the Falcons plus 215, 1 unit to win the NFC South.
I'm also with you on the Falcons for NFC South. Now, we didn't get around to an NFC South preview, and quite honestly, I think it's because I didn't care that much about the NFC South, because we chatted about this before we went live, that I think that it doesn't really matter who wins the South, because end of the day, they're probably we'll call them the 4 seed in the NFC, because I think there's other divisions with higher win totals. And that means that you're probably facing the winner of Dallas and Philly of the NFC East. I don't see a scenario where either of those teams lose against an NFC South team. So that's why I wasn't too concerned about the division. Now, Falcons-wise, I like what I see from them heading into the year. Ritter entering year 2, same with Drake London. We saw that he was one of the best rookie wide receivers. Kyle Pitts, let's hopefully get him going, especially in the red zone. Touchdowns-wise, he has not been there very much. Algier,
he's been fine getting yards. He's been fine getting yards. He just hasn't been able to get across the goal line. Like it's been weird.
Yeah, and then you've got Bijan, you've got Algier. I just think that that's a very good offense that has a good offensive line. It's going to obviously depend on how Ritter plays, but I think he did enough last year to tell me that he's going to be solid this year. And the defense, I think, is going to keep them in games. I'm not crazy about a division when you're looking at Baker Mayfield, Bryce Young, Derek Carr, and Desmond Ritter, but I think Ritter might be top 2 in that division as far as quarterback play goes this year. So that's why I'm leaning.
That running back room is loaded, man. You've got Bijan, Tyler Algier, and then everybody's forgetting that Cordero Patterson's still on that roster. So they've got a bunch of dudes. And Cordero gives you a level of, like, if the offense is struggling, like, he can always be on special teams and make plays, and that's something he enjoys doing. So you don't have to, like, worry about him, like, getting an attitude and wanting to leave the team or something like that. Shout out.
You don't have to worry about him being Marcus Mariota is basically
exactly. Shout out Marcus Mariota.
Shout out Marcus Mariota. Really loved him on quarterback for the limited episodes that he was on before he left the team. Now, there's one that I really like, and I think it's because the NFC is so down. I like NFC East to win the Super Bowl at plus 400, and by that logic, I'm getting Philly and Dallas. As much as I think the Giants could be a 6 or 7 seed playoff-wise, I don't see them as real Super Bowl contenders. But the fact that you can get the NFC East, where I think you have the 2 best teams in the NFC, some people might argue San Fran. I'm not one of those people. I think that the 2 best teams are coming out of the NFC East. And so you're basically betting on, I think they get to the Super Bowl, and then after that, we'll see who they play. Maybe you get Buffalo, who hasn't been in a Super Bowl in a very long time. Maybe the Jags sneak through, haven't been in a Super Bowl ever. Maybe it ends up being the Bengals, who went to the Super Bowl a couple of years, but do they have the top to bottom roster to beat Philly or Dallas? That I'm not sure of. And if it's the Chiefs, maybe the Eagles or Dallas can break through and win that Super Bowl. But I just think at plus 400, you're getting both of those teams. And then it's an absolute dogfight out in the AFC. So I really like that one. What do you think of it? I think it ties into one of your futures that we've been talking about. And I wore the sweater knowing where you were going with this one.
Yeah, so. I actually basically played the same, except subtracted Philly out of the equation. I played Dallas outright 14-1 to win the Super Bowl. I think that they're at worst the 3rd best team in the NFC, depending on how you feel about San Francisco. I have them as the 2nd best team in the NFC and not that far behind Philadelphia. So I think you're basically free rolling this bet into the divisional round of the playoffs at absolute worst. And I think then you're sitting with a 14-1 and you're playing a team that you would probably either consider inferior or at worst or equal to. You're basically asking them to win one playoff game. If you get that 14-1 into the NFC Championship game, you basically have a lot of decisions that you can make. You can hedge it out. You can ride it. If Philly gets upset for some reason, at home in the playoffs, then you can handle that. This is also all assuming that Dallas is a wild card team. Like, I don't think it's impossible to think that they could win the division. And if they win the division, they're the 1 seed in the NFC. You're not even playing until the divisional round, and then you only need 1 playoff win. All and at home at Jerry World against the lowest seeded team remaining in the playoffs, all just to get to a place where you can hedge out. Like, I think Dallas just has a ton of value. You're going to have a ton of options. Like, it's very, very rare to find a team at this price where you can just free roll it into the divisional round, free roll it into the playoffs, knowing that you're going to be there. If you wanted to do that with teams at longer prices, you have to live with the fact that the floor is outside the playoffs. Like, Detroit could miss the playoffs. The Jets could miss the playoffs. That doesn't mean they will, but they could. And the AFC is loaded. Same thing with Jacksonville. You have to deal like the Jacksonville could lose the division. I'm not saying that they're going to, but they could lose the division. The Titans aren't incompetent. Same with the Ravens. Like, the Ravens are the second best team in the division. But you get the point. I just think at this price, it's too long. Dallas should be closer to 8-1, 10-1. Like, they should be amongst the probably 5 or 6 favorites to win the Super Bowl at a shorter price. And 14 is too much for my blood. That has them 6th at DraftKings right now. I would have them ahead of the Bengals and ahead of the 49ers and putting them at 4th. So that I went ahead and played Dallas 14-1.
I am obviously a Dallas fan, so I don't hate the pick. I'm very hopeful for the pick. I'd love to see you cash in, and then obviously I get to cash in as a fan if that ends up happening. So I do think that the value is definitely there, 14-1. As you said, I don't want any part of the AFC as far as betting futures of, even if it's like the division one that I had. Like, I don't have an interest in picking any winner in the West, any winner in the East, as much as I've done maybe like a division parlay for fun. That's more so just for my entertainment throughout the season. I don't truly believe that there's a clear-cut team that's definitely going to come out of the AFC, whereas I feel like between Philly and Dallas, I feel very confident that it's going to be one of those two teams coming out of the NFC. So let's move over. I've got a couple player prop ones that I like. I have posted the thread on Twitter. I'm going to be posting more of these throughout the day, or the days ahead, I should say, heading into the season. So I'm going to start with 2 running back ones that I like. I'm going to start with Najee Harris over 7.5 rushing TDs. This is at plus 120 over at Bet99. I just think coming into year 2 with Pickett, you've got an improved O-line. He's finished with 7 touchdowns his last 2 seasons, and that's with probably a bottom 5 O-line in the entire league. Pittsburgh has had terrible offensive line play. I think that improvement alone, I think the Steelers being more competitive, I just think that I love the value here. One of the things is Pittsburgh played themselves out of games a lot over the last couple of years, and I think that's not going to happen now that you have better QB play. And so because of that, Najee's just going to be more important for that offense. So I do like Najee touchdowns. I also like a guy who's finally getting the opportunity to be the running back 1 on this team. I like Alexander Mattison over 6.5 touchdowns at minus 105. Pretty similar to my thought process of, I think that this offensive line is pretty good. I think we've seen Dalvin. He went over in 3 of his 4 seasons in Minnesota. The one that he missed, he still had 6. So he was right there. Madison as a backup last year had 5 as well. So we're really just asking him to get double the carries and just get a couple more touchdowns. So I think there's great value there. What do you think of both of these ones?
Yeah, I like Madison a lot. I think that running backs are largely replaceable, and I think that system has shown that you can have a lot of success as a running back. There's really no true goal line threat there where he's basically just kind of get the workload. So I love Madison. And then your second one was who?
Najee.
Yeah, so I like Najee a lot too. The only concern is they really like Jalen Warren, so you just hope he doesn't take too many carries away. I know a lot of really sharp fantasy people that like Jalen Warren just in case something happens with Najee. But as long as Najee continues to get the bulk of the workload, he should have a really, really good year.
Okay, so what's the next feature that you've got?
So I played Vikings under 8.5 wins in the NFC North. I said this on our NFC North podcast. They went 11-0 in 1-score games. They easily could have lost half of them. I just think mathematically, statistically, all these things should regress to a mean. You take away Dalvin as well. Like, I think we're both believers in Alexander Mattison, but like that may not. Like, we'll kind of see. They lost Adam Thielen. They're asking a rookie to step in and replicate his production to an extent. And so I don't really like their defense either. And also, we were talking pre-show just how we thought, how viable Chicago and Green Bay are as we get closer to the season. And then obviously Detroit is the favorite. Like, I don't think it's out of the question that Minnesota finishes last in this division. And I think there's a real possibility they finish 3rd. They're my least favorite team in the division right now. So I played them under 8.5 wins. I expect them to finish somewhere around 6, 7, or 8, somewhere in the 6 to 8 range.
So I'm the lowest on the Packers. This is something that I noted with Cole Raines. I'm not a Jordan Love guy. I know there's a lot of people heading into this season who think that Jordan Love's going to have a really good year. I'm not one of those people. From the limited action that I've seen, I'm just not a big believer in it. Now, that being said, Minnesota is probably going to have a bottom 2 defense in the entire league because they somehow got worse despite being like 30th in many statistical categories defensively.
I know.
And yeah, this offense is going to be interesting to keep an eye on because, yes, Jefferson, he's coming off one of the best wide receiver years in recent memory, but can he sustain that every single year moving forward? Because you lose Thielen, now you're going to be relying on Osborne and Addison. They obviously just gave Hawkinson a lot of money as well. He's set in the tight end market right now. I just don't know how well that team's going to look. I still believe that they're a wild card playoff team. But at that, then that has me at 9 wins. And maybe that's perhaps me just being a bit more hopeful, being lower on Green Bay than most, thinking that Chicago's a year away and seeing the rest of the NFC and thinking, well, have they really surpassed Minnesota? And for me, they haven't. So that would be my only hesitation there. But again, I'm seeing them as a 9-win team. So that can, as you said, a lot of really close wins last year. A couple of those don't go their way. They finish at 7-10 or 8-9. So that's an interesting one that I'll definitely keep an eye on for you. Now, I do like Fields, speaking of that same division, most QB rushing touchdowns at plus 700. And you're basically banking on Hurts not having quite the year that he had from a rushing perspective. Last year, Josh Allen's just ahead of him. You've got Lamar just behind him. But I look at this Chicago team. I don't see a goal line back here. I don't think that Khalil Herbert's that. I think they brought in Deontay Foreman, if I'm not mistaken. So I just don't love the running back room there. I think a lot of the time when they're second and goal from the 4-yard line, Fields is going to call his own number and try and punch it in himself. I think he has the potential to get to double-digit touchdowns, maybe 11 at the very most. That's kind of where they have Hurts line right now. I think he's going to regress a little bit. He's going to finish with 9 or 10 on the year. So I think at plus 700, you're getting a QB that is very much rush heavy, and I think that it's got great potential. What do you think of that line?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I just think his legs are such a weapon, and I think they know it and they know how to use it. I think the biggest development for Fields will come through the air, but I mean, I think that also helps just because they're going to score on more drives. Like they're going to be able to have more confidence, call more pass plays. Like, rushing touchdowns don't all have to be designed. Like, I mean, he'll be able to score when things break down and stuff like that. I just think he's going to be better. I think they're going to score more points as a team this year. I think there's going to be some games where teams just don't have an answer for his legs, and so he scores 2 or 3 touchdowns, and and that's a huge boost as far as this goes. So,
yeah, for me, if I saw this line at closer to plus 250, I would have stayed away, or plus 300. But seeing plus 700 with a guy that rushed as much as he did and an improved wide receiver core, so he can actually get out and make some of those plays, but also with his legs at times, I think that it's got great value there. Now, let's talk about one that I think we've consensusly agreed on now after speaking before the show on Offensive Player of the Year. So you were the one who gave me the name Tyreek Hill at plus 2,000. What is it for Tyreek for you this year? And then I'll kind of weigh in on my thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, we talked before the show. He missed some games last year and still had 1,710 yards. I think it was like 8 touchdowns. And so, that's obviously a really elite year for a receiver. Tua missed a lot of games as well, and he still found ways to play well. So I think a lot of this with Miami, just in all senses, is banking on Tua's health. But I think if the Dolphins are good and the Dolphins get in the playoffs, that means that Tyreek kind of had a monster year, and he is probably going to have a monster year regardless. So I think if the Dolphins get in the playoffs and he has, 1,900 yards and 10 touchdowns, which is just a slight upgrade from last year, then I think you're right there. I think you're right there in terms of an Offensive Player of the Year caliber player. And so 20 to 1 for that type of player who is going to have that type of production. Justin Jefferson won it last year with 1,809 yards and 8 touchdowns. Like, Tyreek Hill wasn't that far off of that last year. He was only about 90 yards short of that production last year with all of the mitigating circumstances that I just described. So I think that Tyreek Hill has got a lot of value in terms of Offensive Player of the Year. I just think a healthy Tua is going to make a world of difference. And so I think 20 to 1 is too much value there. I think the Dolphins, I've told you, maybe I didn't tell you, but I think the Dolphins have the most value in terms of winning the AFC East. Like, I think that's a team that can win the AFC East. I think it's a team that is going to be good enough to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Theoretically, like, I'm not picking them, but I think they're going to be good enough to be in the conversation. And so that puts Tyreek Hill firmly in Offensive Player of the Year discussion at 20-1.
I think that's the thing when I'm looking at Offensive Player of the Year. So I had Jefferson last year plus 1,600. It was probably my biggest future win. My thought process was plenty of opportunity in that offense. New head coach. I just thought that the offense was going to pop a lot more, and it did. Jefferson was a big reason why. When I look at Miami, I think they're good enough on both sides of the ball to be a playoff team this year. I would have them probably as second in the division, just ahead of the Jets. But when I look at the other guys that are up for the award, Jamar Chase is the favorite right now at plus 1,100. And I think the big reason for that is some of the guys behind him have already won this award. But I think it's been long enough since Tyreek won it that we don't have that voter fatigue that you can see at times. And I think that, as you said, he missed time last year and he barely missed Jefferson's yards. And we were talking about how incredible Jefferson was all year. And it's like Tyreek was right there. And so if he plays a full year with a healthy Tua, I just think that that's the best value on the board at plus 2,000. I was debating Nick Chubb. He's plus 1,650. But the issue that I have there is that I don't see Cleveland being a playoff team. And for me to be Offensive Player of the Year, you have to be on an explosive offense. I don't think Cleveland's going to have an explosive offense this year, which is why I stayed away. I wasn't overly impressed with how Deshaun Watson looked late in the year last year. And I know that Chubb's a running back, but I think that means that the defense is going to be able to stack the box a little bit more if Deshaun doesn't upgrade his play like we saw him play in Houston. Now, any other future bets for you when it comes to
the other one total that I really like, and I'm going to sprinkle on this team to win the division as well, God help me, is the Denver Broncos. I am taking them over 8.5 wins. I think it's really telling. I think the line's telling a story. They finished 5-12 last year on a preseason 7.5 win total. You come back this year with a new head coach and Sean Payton. The preseason win total is 8.5 with no juice either way, just even money. I think a lot of square knowledge, public knowledge will tell you, hey, this team won 5 games last year. Russell Wilson looked cooked. We're going to take the under. I really think that the damage that Nathaniel Hackett did with that organization is, like, it's incredibly understated. Like, he really is genuinely just not very smart or he was just not equipped to do the job. Like, he was not good at it. And so Sean Payton comes in where we know he's incredibly good at this. His scheme is going to score points. He's always found ways to score points in this league. So I think that they're going to be over 8.5 wins. That shouldn't be bad. They're going to be playing a last place schedule this year. So the schedule shouldn't look too difficult. I think they're going to be able to find 9. I think they'll be in playoff conversation. I have them in the playoffs. I think that if someone's going to step up and take the Chiefs crown in the AFC West, I think it's them, because they're going to play defense. It's a hard place to win at Mile High, and you're going to have bad teams coming to Mile High as well as divisional opponents. So I think that they're also my favorite week 1 wager. I'll say that. I think they're going to blow the Raiders out in week 1. Not close. I think they make a statement week 1. And we kind of talk about the Broncos going into week 2 as a playoff contender. So I'll say it now so that way we can wait. So when it comes up on Overreaction Monday next week, then nobody can say that they said it before me. So I'm sprinkling on them to win the AFC West. And when I say sprinkling, I mean literally like a tenth of a unit. I mean a tenth of a unit. Like, I'm really, really not going to overexpose myself to the Broncos. But I do think that if you want good value in a division winner that's not maybe one that's getting talked about as much, because while I bet Atlanta, like, it's not a square play, but it's one where I'm not going to be the first person that's told you that Atlanta is a good bet to win the division. But I probably am the first one telling you to bet the Broncos. So I would go in. I'm trying to find a price real quick. 6-1 to win the division. I don't think it's crazy. If someone's going to win it, not name the Chiefs, I think it's Denver. A lot of people are going to tell you this is the year the Chargers break out, but it's a new system. A lot of the same receivers. I have a lot of the same concerns. They've taken my money 100 times over the course of like the last 5 years. Not going to expose myself to that again. Brandon Staley is going to go for 4th downs against the Broncos and get beat both times. So I just think Denver's going to be at the very worst just as good as the Chargers, if not a little bit better. So I'll take 6-1 with the Broncos.
So I will be the one that will bet the Chargers, and I'm not going to take them to win the division. There's two actually that I like more so than winning the division. They'll probably take my money for the second and third time because I'm sure that at some point I've thought the Chargers were going to be that team. But first one is Herbert MVP at plus 1050. I do think that Kellen Moore coming in and calling plays, I do think that offense is going to be improved. They were one of the most hurt teams on defense last year as well. I just think that the Chargers do have that potential to just have a really good offensive year. And so I do think that when we're talking value, at least when it comes to MVP odds, I'm not looking at Mahomes. I'm not looking at Burrow. I'm not looking at Allen. I think that the media absolutely loves Herbert. They've been crowning him as the next best thing since he's been a rookie. And so I do think that at plus 1050, it's good odds. I do more so like their over 9.5 win total at minus 120. I do think that they're a 10-7 football team, maybe 11-6 if they have a really good year. But I just like that win total at 9.5. I just don't see a scenario where bringing in Kellen Moore, they somehow get worse and don't make the playoffs. So that's why I would go 10-7, 11-6 is where the Chargers are going to finish this year. Now, one team that you mentioned as being going to get the break speed off them week one is the Raiders. And I did bet the worst record last year to be the Bears at plus 1,000 that hit. But is this an Arizona at plus 210? Like, don't even think about it. They're going to be the worst team in football this year. Or is a team like the Raiders, because I'm thinking of them with Jimmy G. I'm not crazy about that offense. I still think that they're good enough to win 4 or 5 games, which is probably enough to not be the worst team in the league. But for you, is Arizona, it's just plus 210. They're the team that's going to be the worst in the league this year.
Remember last time I was on, I told you I was going to put a 10th of a unit on Arizona to go 0-17 just to have something to root for, because I thought that the week 10 through 12 stretch was the only chance they had. And so I think barring some crazy upset, like I think Arizona could go 0-17. I think it was like 16-1.
So the only reason why I asked, because I knew that you brought it up last time, was because they didn't have Dobbs then. I know that you obviously watched him as a Titans fan. He's going to be their starter until Kyler maybe comes back, and Colt McCoy's not going to be there. So has that changed at all for you, or are you still on the 0-17 train potentially happening?
I'm still on it. Like, and they may not go 0-17, but they're going to be like at 3-14, I think, at the best. So I'm still all in on it.
Okay.
Sticking with it.
All right. I had to get your thoughts on that because I knew that was something that we chatted about last time. I keep trying to find a reason to bet someone that isn't Arizona, and I just can't get myself to do it. I probably won't bet it because a future at plus 210 on something like that.
Jimmy G also does present like somewhat of a floor. Like I don't think he's a world beater, but I think he's enough to where you're just like, all right, like I'm not sure that he can be the worst team in the league. Quarterback. Like I think you have to bet someone where like if you're gonna bet like a fewest wins, I think you're going like maybe a rookie quarterback like Houston, or maybe a
Tampa.
I was gonna say Washington, but I didn't want to hurt feelings. So I think like a Washington maybe, or if you don't believe in Anthony Richardson, then like maybe the Colts. But the problem is like with those AFC South teams is the division's so bad. Like those other 3 teams other than Jacksonville are so bad that like if they just beat each other up and they all go 1-1 against each other, that kind of hurts you as far as worse records go. So
okay. So I think we've covered a lot of future bets here. Let's talk about who's going to be the playoff teams this year. So let's start in the AFC. Division winners for me. As much as I want the Chargers to win the division, I don't think realistically they will. I think it's Kansas City. I think it's Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Jacksonville. What are your 4 division winners in the AFC?
In the AFC, I'm going to take Miami, Cincinnati. I didn't want to do that. Jacksonville, and then Kansas City.
Okay, so then who would your 3 wild card teams be then after that?
Damn. You want to go first? I'm debating. Yeah. I'm debating between two teams.
So I have Miami in as a playoff team. I've got the Chargers getting in, and then I've got Baltimore getting in. The Jets miss out. Teams like the Steelers miss out as well. Denver misses out. So what would your 3 be?
You know what? Fine. I'll be the guy. It's going to be – so I'll have Buffalo as a wild card, Baltimore as a wild card, and Denver as a wild card. The Jets missed the playoffs in Rodgers' first year.
Damn. Okay. I like it. I think that the potential's there. Everyone's very low on Denver, but Sean Payton coming in, I think that could be a vastly better looking football team because I think Nathaniel Hackett was just a very bad head coach.
But this just goes to show you how good the AFC is at this point, man. Like, you really we had a hard time there, and that's either way, whether Denver gets left out, whether the Jets get left out, whether it's the Dolphins maybe that miss, it just shows how thin the margin for error is going to be with all these good teams in the AFC.
And as we head over to the NFC now, we're going to talk about a couple teams where it's like, man, they are not better than probably the
10th best teams in the AFC. Yeah.
So division-wise, I've got Philly, San Fran, Detroit, and Atlanta as my 4 division winners. Who are yours?
I'm going to go Dallas, Atlanta, San Francisco, and Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your 3 playoff teams that don't win the divisions in the NFC are?
Philadelphia, Detroit, and the Giants.
See, even as we get into this, I'm looking at some of these teams and I'm like, man, it's a shame that they're going to get in.
Actually, I'm going to flip it. Philadelphia, Detroit, and the Packers.
Okay.
So I just basically picked. I just picked here on this very show for the Vikings to finish last.
Yeah.
Because I put the Bears as the division winner and put the Packers and the Lions in the playoffs.
Okay. I'm going to have Minnesota making the playoffs. I'll have Dallas in, and I'll have the Giants in. I think that Seattle will probably be 8th, and then Chicago and Detroit right behind them. But
all right, we'll have some fun, and we'll have some fun. I'll even give you a playoff game prediction. Atlanta puts Philly out in the first round.
Oh, okay. We're going to come back
to
that.
Philly disappointment. Philly disappointment of the season. Like, no doubt about it. Most disappointing team in the NFL this year.
Okay, so with that, then, who have you got coming out of the AFC? Who have you got coming out of the AFC, NFC? Who wins the Super Bowl this year? Obviously, you've got the Dallas Future, so I'm assuming that they're a part of that. So
yeah, Dallas. I'm going Dallas. Dallas, Buffalo in the Super Bowl. Dallas wins. I cash my ticket, and my future kids are really happy about it.
I have Buffalo and Philly in the Super Bowl, with Buffalo winning their first Super Bowl. I think that this is a big Josh Allen redemption year. Everyone was so high on Buffalo last year, and I was one of those people, and then they didn't deliver. I think that they finally do this year. Although I do think that the road for them to get there is they really need Kansas City or Cincy to put each other out, or one of them out. Because if you have to go through both, then I just think that that's so daunting in the AFC. So let's go over now. Let's do our last call pick segment. This is where we give out. We're going to look ahead to some bets later on in the week just because I'm not betting baseball anymore. I hurt myself too much over the summertime. I just have no interest in betting September baseball with so many teams really not trying to win games. But Last Mountain Distillery, they're the sponsor of this segment. Family owned and operated in Lumsden, Saskatchewan, the heart of grain country. The first micro distillery's success lies in their commitment to producing high-quality handcrafted spirits. Their craft distilling process brings out the full flavor of the grain and leaves a smooth finish unlike any other. Check out some of their great products like their Old Fashioned, their Dill Pickle Vodka, and a lot of other great products. Thank you so much to Last Mountain Distillery for supporting the show. So let's look ahead to other bets. Now, I've already mentioned the ones that are happening here on Monday. We do have college football next weekend as well. And I had a good college football weekend, but I'm not the biggest college football bettor. So as a guy from the South who lives in SEC country, what is a game for you to watch that maybe people aren't looking at quite yet?
Yeah, so for me, I think so for one to watch, I'm not, and I will bet this game. This isn't going to be the best bet that I give you to close the show, but I do think Miami Texas A&M is going to be one to really, really pay attention to. I've already locked in on Miami plus 4.5. I think Texas A&M is fine, but I think Miami coming back home off of last year's loss, revenge spot against the Aggies, I think it's going to be good. Miami actually had a little bit of an environment. I think Van Dyke will bounce back, and I'm just not super ready to buy in on the Aggies offense yet. So I kind of like Miami to win a close one at home. And even if not, I think it's a field goal game. So I've got Miami plus 4.5 there. And then I'll go ahead. I'm going to give for my best bet. I'm going to give one future and one week 2 play. We'll start with the week 2 play. Going to Boulder, to Colorado. The Buffaloes are hosting Nebraska after week 1. Colorado more than impressive after their in Fort Worth against TCU. They looked really, really good. Laying 3 here against the Cornhuskers, and we are going to go ahead and back Nebraska. Taking the Huskers to beat the Buffaloes. I went ahead and took the 3 points. I fully expect them to win this game outright. I think that with the head coach or with the offensive play calling upgrade, you go from TCU to Nebraska. Colorado couldn't stop the run. They were light up front. Nebraska is not only going to be more physically imposing than TCU was, but they're going to commit to the run game and stick with it, knowing that Jeff Sims is going to have trouble with turning the ball over. I fully expect them to be able to run the ball all day. I think that leads to a really, really shortened game in terms of clock, which is going to hurt the Colorado offense with how fast they play. I think Colorado's defense is going to be on the field for a lot of that game. I think Nebraska wears them down with their size, their physicality. They win a close game. I took Nebraska plus 3. It actually is a 2-unit play for me. I love Nebraska. I ordered a Nebraska hoodie. I'll be wearing a Huskers hoodie during the game. I'm fully in on Nebraska. Also, I tweeted it. I would just buy Nebraska stock now. I think that's going to be a team maybe next season you want to look at in futures markets. And then in the futures market for this season, since we actually have prices on that, we're going to go ahead and back Oregon State 12-1 to win the Pac-12. I said it on Field Stormers the other day before the season started. They played San Jose State yesterday. They covered the 16.5 on the road and won 42-17. DJ Uiagalelei looked really good. 5 total touchdowns. The Clemson transfer, Damian Martinez was really good on the ground, and the Beavers are always going to play good defense. It's a loaded conference. 12-1 is too long for the team that's probably going to play the best defense in the league. And now without divisions, they don't have to beat any specifically head-to-head. They just need to finish in the top 2 of that conference to get to the conference title game, which gives us a shot in terms of hedging out once we get to the conference title game. You're going to have key games on a Friday night at home against Utah, and a key game at home against Washington, and a key road trip to Oregon. But other than that, you get road trips to Colorado, Cal, and Washington State, who I would consider, even after the week 1, I would still consider those to be 3 of the worst teams in the Pac-12. So your road games are not too difficult outside of Oregon, which is a rivalry game. All of your big games are going to be in Corvallis, and you're going to have a good defense, a good run game, and a quarterback you can trust, and a coach that you can trust. So 12-1 is too much for me. I played Oregon State 12-1 to win the Pac-12.
Okay. Interesting. Nebraska. I don't think that you're going to see a lot of those tickets, but
I saw the stat before we started the show. A Bet Online rep tweeted that the only team in any sport that has taken more bets for their matchup this week than Colorado is the Kansas City Chiefs. It's Kansas City Chiefs and then the Colorado Buffaloes against the spread. If you're taking Nebraska, it's the ultimate contrarian spot. Everybody watched Shedeur Sanders light the world on fire last week, and so naturally they're going to come back and back him here at home. I'm just going to go the other way from a matchup standpoint. -3, -3.5 for Colorado is way off my numbers. On the look-ahead line before they played last week, Nebraska was -8.5. Way too big of an adjustment. You can't tell me that there's an 11-point adjustment based on 1 week. So I'm going to back the Huskers here.
Okay, I like it. I'm actually looking. So I kind of like that NC State at home, a 7.5. I do think that that's potential.
It's interesting you said that. That's what I said to Mo on Field Stormers. I said that we were talking about Notre Dame. He mentioned them as a national title contender and was going through their schedule. And I said they better be careful on the road. That's a different team at home. NC State is. They play really, really well. They were really sleepy in stores against UConn last week, which was expected, I think, from my point of view. especially given it was UConn's first big home game in a really, really long time where they actually were excited about the football team.
Yeah.
So I think NC State comes home and they play a lot better here. They probably were looking ahead a bit last week. They should play really, really well here. That game should be close down the stretch.
Like, I still think that Notre Dame pulls it out, but if you told me at the end of it, it's like 27-21, NC State barely covers, but they do.
Yep.
That's kind of where I'm leaning with it. So I do like the NC State line. Otherwise, I haven't seen a lot that I've really looked at. I'm intrigued by where that USC line goes. I know that they're playing Stanford and they should beat the brakes off them, but I don't think I'm going to bet. I think I would bet their team total over if I was going to play anything. Which
try to avoid that defense as much as you can. Like,
you're going to have to.
I do think another spot to look is I think laying the 7 points with Ole Miss on the road at Tulane is something worth looking at. It's a ranked matchup, but these two teams are in a totally different class, which is why Ole Miss is laying 7 on the road. Line's telling you a story here. The last time these two teams played, Ole Miss beat them by I think 35 to 42 points at home. I don't expect it to be that bad on the road, but 7 is way too short. That team should be able to go down there. Tulane's box score against South Alabama is going to be kind of deceiving. They had some massive issues up front with South Alabama from just a line of scrimmage standpoint. And if they had issues with South Al, then Ole Miss is going to kill them up front. And if they get killed up front, there's just no shot.
I do know as well, obviously no EPL this upcoming weekend, but it is international break. I do think that there's some potential there in Euro qualifiers. I really do like Serbia over Hungary as a Thursday one. And then I got to look deeper into some spreads, probably look later in the week as well. I'm very interested to see who's actually going to come over and play for their country over this little bit of a break here. One of them that I would look at, and it's mostly a homer pick, is Scotland over Cyprus. I do think that I'm going to have to get a spread there and probably a decent one because Scotland's probably been the surprise of Euro qualifiers because they're 4-0 in their group. They've beat Spain and they've beat Norway already, which is pretty crazy to beat Holland and Spain in the same competition. So I am hopeful, and I'm going to maybe keep an eye on that one as a potential pick later in the week.
It's funny you mentioned the footy futures because I have officially pulled a footy future. I have bet Tottenham plus 175 to finish in the top 4. I'm all like Angeball is just a completely different level. They looked like a completely different team with Son at the 9, and they had already been good. I think they're going to be able to really bag some points too with the upcoming fixtures list. They do have a road game against Arsenal, I think, in 3 weeks, and then they also come home. They have a home match with Liverpool. But other than that, they get Fulham, they get Sheffield United, and they get Luton Town in the next few weeks. They're minus 390 currently at home against Sheffield United, so safe to say they're going to bag 3 points there. I think right now with the way Newcastle's playing, somewhat to an extent with the way United is playing, definitely with the way Chelsea's playing, and I think they're more talented than Brighton. I just think that 1 game a week schedule is going to help them a ton. I think they're better than Chelsea. And with Newcastle and United having to play multiple games a week as we get later into the year, I think Tottenham's going to have an edge on those teams and be more rested, especially already being out of the Carabao Cup. I think that creates some value. I think they're going to finish 4th, be back in the Champions League next year under Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, I've been very impressed by Tottenham. Obviously, they fell behind early to Burnley, and then they had a really great performance after that, Son scoring a hat trick there. But United, I'm trying not to panic because I recognize that they took care of business how they should have with Nottingham and Wolves. And then they had 2 tough road games. They played Tottenham where they didn't take some chances. And then they played Arsenal where, let's face it, they were in it. They got outplayed, but they were in it until the 90th plus whatever. And then they gave up 2 goals. Going to be a very telling stretch over the next couple weeks because after international break, they play Brighton at home. And then they have to go and play Bayern Munich at Bayern Munich, so I'm not really too thrilled for that matchup, but I do think that they're going to have a tough stretch coming up after this international break. They really need to get healthy as well. I think it's really showing on the defensive side that they have not been great, and they need some of those guys back. So
I will go ahead and say, too, single game bet, we don't have a line yet that I know of, and I'll check real quick to make sure that we don't have a line. If we do, then I'll go ahead and give you the play.
That Brighton game for me is really
we do not. Yeah, so we do not have a line on it. Obviously, we'll wait to see injury status and stuff coming back. But as long as everybody's healthy and things stay the way they are, we will be backing Tottenham against Arsenal in the North London Derby at the Emirates in a few weeks.
Ooh. I'm interested by that one. We'll have to keep an eye on it for sure. But Walker, I appreciate you hopping on, man. Go and check out all of his content at Walker Bailey 818, I believe is where you can find him. And so tell the folks where they can find your work.
Yeah, it is. It's at Walker Bailey 818. We just recorded the week 1 recap and kind of brief week 2 preview of Field Stormers today. We're actually recording again tomorrow. It took a lot of convincing to get Mo to do more than one episode of something in a week, but
You're
did
doing
do that.
The Lord's work by getting him to finally do more episodes.
Well, we got him. We'll be back. We'll be back tomorrow. I think that'll record tomorrow. We're kind of just waiting to let this Clemson game get played, and then we're going to record tomorrow. It'll probably come out Thursday as a more firm week 2 preview as opposed to week 1 recap and trying to do it all at once. And that's going to kind of be the format for the show this year, especially once the schedule normalizes, where it'll just be Saturday games. So we'll have a Sunday recap of the week prior where we can kind of react. Week 2 AP poll or the week's AP poll will be out. And so we'll do that. And then we'll also have a midweek episode where later in the year, we'll be able to do some CFP rankings reaction. We'll be able to preview the next week and do stuff like that. So we'll get 2 episodes of Field Stormers every single week. That's firmly, we confirmed that today. That's going to be the schedule upcoming. I think we may even do like some later in the year, some live stream for some games where we just kind of sit and just kind of call the game as it is, like as it's going on, and maybe just give people another place where they can watch the game if you don't want to listen to, Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler or whoever it may be calling the game, or Beth Mowens or something. So that's kind of what we've got in the barrel, ready to fire for Field Stormers this fall. It should be a big fall. We're really, really excited. Check out everybody else at offtheballnetwork.com. There's a ton of football content coming. I see you Sundays back this week. I'm really, really excited. And then Overreaction Monday, obviously the next Monday, a week from today, ahead of Monday Night Football. It'll be overreactions to every week 1 game. We'll have a really, really good crew every single week. There'll be a lot of different faces that hop in and out over the course of the season. So really, really excited to be a part of that. And then obviously NBA season's not that far away, probably 6 to 8 weeks or so from the start of the NBA season, or at least at the very least, the start of the preseason. And we've got so many hoops heads at the network. So just follow those guys. I know that they've been really locked in on the FIBA World Cup and stuff like that right now. So just follow all their coverage of that as that continues to go on.
Appreciate you coming on as always. Yep, check out Field Stormers. A lot of great college football content there. I lean on those guys a lot, especially from a betting perspective as we get more so into the college football season. NFL kicks off Thursday. And you heard our preview earlier in the episode as to how we think that game's going to go. And then check us out on Friday as well. We're going to have a full breakdown of some college games, some NFL, and a lot more. But appreciate you all.